This may come as a surprise to you, but I'm a bit of a large character, and as such, I love meeting giant costume characters in the parks. For years, all I've heard about is how small you had to be the performer inside the Mickey Mouse costume. But what I never hear is anyone talking about the other end of that spectrum. So, because this is YouTube, I have compiled a convenient list of not 10, but 11 of my favorite gigantic costume characters. There are all kinds of height requirements for being a performer in the park, and here's some good examples of some of the taller performers. To be a Green Army Man, you have to be somewhere between 5'11" to 6'3". Launchpad McQuack, 6'2" to 6'4". Dr. Facilier, 6 foot to 6'6". Even Woody can be as tall as 6'4". And when you're wearing a giant cowboy hat helmet, that's a pretty tall Woody. But none of these costumes compare to the absolute beasts I'm about to show you. Chewbacca in the movies, canonically, Peter Mayhew and all, was 7.5 feet tall. And here's something crazy about the casting for Chewie in the parks. You have to be 6'6" to 6'8" just to be cast as Chewbacca. Then you wear lifted boots and a pretty tall headpiece. You can see Chewie's forehead. Wookiees have giant brains, bro, because look at the size of the head of that Wookiee. It is massive. And when you meet Chewie, I've met him a few times. He's always been dope. He's always been super chill. He's a pretty chill party Wookiee. But every time you meet him, it's impressive about how big he is. I'm 6'2", so I'm always used to people knowing what it looks like up my nose, but now I know what it looks like up Chewbacca's nose. Wookiee boogies.
Do you think he just wipes his nose with his paws, or do you think he actually...
He licks his nose, for sure. Tight shot of the party, Wookiee! Remember that secret Hawaiian party where Lilo and Stitch's 15 cousins were at? And it was like a rainbow Teletubby Stitch party? Gantu was there, and he's made several other appearances, kind of like special events. Gantu is huge. He is an absolute unit of a meet and greet character. And you could just see from the simple silhouette of the costume how the performer inside operates. But because the lower part of the arms are actually the active part of the performer's arms, there's lots of range of movement. And he's this big imposing character with lots of fun interactions. Gantu is a great example of all the gimmicks they use to make giant characters, from overextended arms to giant platform boots, and then huge shoulder pads with costume heads on top of them. He's got everything to make him as big as possible. Baymax is the best. He's just so giant, but also so squishable, And I'm always talking about how this arguably has to be the best job in the parks. Being a giant inflatable Baymax person inside of a well air-conditioned room in Epcot, in the shade. Golden. He's got it made, baby. Baymax. But he's so big and he's so squishy. Kenny and I were arguing, is Baymax on this list or not? And then we watched a meet and greet video and he's the width of an entire family. So Baymax is huge. He is huge. And surprisingly, he's still very interactable. He can still kind of reach out and grab you. He can bend those arms a little bit. He's got those blinks. I love the blinks. I really, really enjoy Baymax. He's the width of an entire generation. So you could take a full family tree photo with Baymax. Ralph is such a hilarious giant character to me because he has these ridiculously bulky arms that are they just have karate chop action. It's more or less all they can do. And so he's just almost completely devoid of expression. And he turns into this weird Franken Ralph. He's just meet and greet, the fire. You gotta keep Ralph away from small children, all right? We've seen what happens.
No, you're hurting me. No.
I'm gonna wreck it.
Danger Ralph. Fire bad. Ralph wreck. There's that one video of them going back into the tube together. He cannot see what's in front of him, the performer inside. It's a mess. This costume is beautiful, and it looked cool in that parade float. But as a costume, he's just too massive and bulky. I know you don't think of Ulf when you think of gigantic costume characters. But if you've seen the Festival of Fantasy Parade at Disney World, there's that whole Tangled section, and he's between giant floats. And Kenny made this great argument. It's like, because he's next to huge parade floats, you don't realize how large he is. But when you look at him compared to like the dance, this is a humongous costume. This gigantic inflatable terror mime. And it's like mesmerizing, but horrifying at the same time. I wish there was a word for that. Horrifically mesmerizing, because that's what this is. And it has such great motion. He's just always bouncing around. But boy, I can't imagine that's comfortable though. Like in July, it was like 110 out, and they're filling it with air, and the air is just the hot, stinky air, and the heat is just soaking into the pavement, and just every breeze is stiff and hot because there's just nothing cool nearby. They got like a leaf blower, just sucking in hot, humid Florida air. No thanks. The sweaty sweat box that thing is. There are so many bears in Disney parks that arguably it is difficult to keep track of them, and a lot of the bears are quite bulky. Some of the country bears are pretty big, almost made on this list, but no bear is as big as Little John. Yeah! With his attached headpiece, he towers like higher than like I think most of the Disneyland castle. Like there's a reason you don't ever see Little John in front of the Disneyland castle, because people be like, whoa man, that castle is way too small. When Little John is out and about, you can see that bear from a mile away. He's got like one of those airport safety cones on the top of his head. I think in case helicopters have to fly by. And it is tall. Tall, tall, tall. Here's one you probably weren't even remotely thinking of, but you can be up to 6'4" and play Sweetums in the park. But then the headpiece that goes on top of the performer is the giant Sweetums head, which really adds a lot of height and character, and he's wearing the relatively thicker boots, and it's hard to meet Sweetums, but if you spend some time in the Muppet Show pre-show, or if you sit front row of the Muppet Show, you can get some up-close views of Sweetums, and I hear if you ask nicely, sometimes he might come out to visit, but don't tell anyone you heard it from me. I don't need me and Sweetum's relationship getting rocky like that. Sweetum and I are distant cousins, can't you tell? Just look at the two of us. Yeah, so when Sweetums first appears, you'll notice he's only really using one arm because the other arm is inside the mouth, going like, oh, bunny, all that kind of stuff. Later, when he comes out and he's using both of his arms, he does a lot of jumping and bouncing movements to flap the lower lip, but that lower lip is a controllable puppeted piece that the performer inside can use. What's my absolute favorite Sweetums fact is that there are secretly 2 of them in the Muppets Vision 3D. At the end, once the theater's exploded and Kermit's on the fire truck, if you look out back behind the fire truck in the rubble and debris, is Sweetums wandering around, being like a panic lunatic like always, but he's also in the theater with you. Sweetums paradox. There are tons of great giant villain costumes in the parks, but none bigger and more intimidating, I believe, than the Lord of the Underworld himself, Hades. He's got big, bulky arms. That's my first problem. Big, bulky, spooky, pale gray skin arms. No thanks. I'm already checked out. And they also don't match the skin tone of his face. I'm already a little strange. Like, that's already creepy and weird to me. But then the shoulders and the head unit of the costume are above the performer's head inside. They're like stacked on top of the performer. And then his head is all pointy and tall, and then he's got the flame hair. It's just a really tall, big, wide, imposing character. Hades is spooky. He's great in the parade, but when you get up close to him, it dwarfs a lot of the guests in the park just by how massive this costume is. Hades has awful posture. If you ever pay attention to Hades in these costumes, he's always like slouched looking down, trying to see what's going on. Maybe he's checking his toenails all the time. Not exactly sure what Hades is up to, but he should see a chiropractor. What if I just did the whole next segment only saying I am Groot? I am Groot, I am Groot, I am Groot.
I am Groot.
I am Groot.
I'm Groot! Man, Groot is huge. Have you met Groot over in Disneyland? He is a very, very tall character. I really want them to bring Groot to Disney World. It would be awesome. We've got the ride, we've broken canon, we've made him a full-grown adult in the ride. Now give me the Groot costume, all right? You've ruined my childhood. Look at this costume. Groot has some big pairs of root boots that make him tower above everyone in Avengers Camp. I mean, my gosh. They're essentially little stilt walkers. They boost the height of the character a 1.5 feet or so. Get out of here, Divine. Here is the Groot. Canonically, Groot is 12 feet tall. And I think in the parks, they push it. They get him up there. They get him at over 7 feet easily. The use of the foam bark on this costume, which allows him to move and kind of groove like Groot does without it looking stiff, is just incredible. It's like he's a living tree. What can I say except I'm sorry about the next one, Maui. My gosh, this behemoth godly costume character first appeared in Shanghai at a stage show, and now most recently made his appearance in Magic Happens. What happened to Magic Happens? That's a great question. I don't know. But for about 2 weeks, we saw this gigantic Maui costume, and it's just uncomfortable. It looks like Maui's entire body has fallen asleep, and he's got like the pins and needles tingles all over his arms and like torso, and all he could do is just be like, if you or anyone you love have limbs that move like this, talk to a doctor. It's such a huge costume though. It's a massive costume. It's not just big in the height, but it's like the width and the bulk. It is huge. How could I make a list of the biggest characters at Disney parks without including literally the OG, the biggest costume character I can think of whenever I think of giant characters in the parks? Sully. He is a massive costume character, and they make such great use of the oversized karate chop arms with the monster pose. This is such a great character, and when you pose with it, it smashes every single time. Doesn't matter if his arms are up or down. It doesn't look awkward. It looks like Sully is about to scare, or he's just doing that dumb, jock scare monster pose. We all watched Monsters, Inc. Sully wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. When Sully puts his arms out, not only is he tall, but he has a huge wingspan. He'll like fill a room. There's that one parade float where he's riding like the bicycle on the oversized drum. It just looks like a regular sized bicycle and a regular sized drum. We, the people watching the parade and the buildings around him, look small. When I just went on a cruise, they had Boo's door in the snorkel area. It's just oddly unsettling seeing a large door underwater, A, and B,
It goes to a child's room.
Right, so what, we gotta drown a child if I open this door? There's a few honorable mentions I want to say here in terms of giant costumes. I'm far from being done on scratching the surface of giant costume characters. There are great outfits like Kronk. My gosh, he's so big and tall with that little dangly bit on the top of his head. Even Goliath from Disney's Gargoyles. Huge costumes we've seen in the parks all over the place. I just wanted to pick some of my favorites. Let me know which big costumes I missed in the comments or out on social media so that when I do the next gigantic costume character video, I can maybe include some of your suggestions, because I know you guys have been out there meeting characters forever and have great stories. So hit me up in the comments below or on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, TikTok, and Kenny and I's vlog. Please stop vlogging. Please stop. It was so much fun running through all these giant costume characters with you guys. Thanks for watching, and as always, you rock.